Welcome back to my channel. I'm Allison Sudlow, and today we are going to be doing a dry mounting tutorial. Hopefully one day I'll be doing a matting tutorial because that's the more common way to save and mount work. But today we're going to be doing a dry mount of this. This is just part of a test tile that I had for a course or a class, but we're going to be dry mounting it. So basically what you need for this is you need the piece that you're going to be dry mounting. You need adhesive paper, a cutter, like specifically a paper cutter, or you can just use an Exacto Blade and a really nice ruler with a cork backing. I say with cork backing because then they're less likely to slip on you. Then a tacking iron or a regular iron. Tacking irons are specifically meant to adhere the adhesive paper to the regular paper without burning and bubbling, and then a hotbed press. And I'll put all the links in the description. And so the first thing that we're going to do with this is we're going to cut this on all of the lines. Sometimes if you want just a window on your dry mount, you can also leave like 1/2 inch border. That just makes it look kind of nice, especially if you go and you do a shadow frame after that. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and cut that, and then I'll show you the next step. We have our piece all cut out, so now we're going to very carefully measure this. Normally you wouldn't do this one-handed, you'd have 2 hands, but we're gonna make do with what we have. Okay, so we've just measured our piece and it ended up being 13 7/8 by 7 7/8. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get a piece of foam core. Foam core is much more rigid than mat board. Although mat board is low acidity normally, you can get foam core that is low acidity or archival quality, but it is very, very expensive, and this is just a test and a demo to show you how to do a dry mount. So we're going ahead and we're going to use our measurements here, and we're going to cut out a piece of foam core that is equivalent to this size. Alright, so we have our poster board cut out, and I actually just went ahead and cut out the adhesive paper, and I made sure to keep enough of a border around it that I could easily cut it off later. That is very, very important. Please don't skip that step. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are essentially just going to attach the adhesive paper to the to our image that we want to dry mount. Okay, so I went ahead and I put a piece of newsprint right over the adhesive paper and my image. I put the image facing down on my table. I made sure it was clean and everything. And so now I'm going to take this tacking iron. This one is the Bien Fang tacking iron. There you go. There's all of the information, but I can put that down in the description for you as well. It is actually in an outlet, so you do kind of have to work close to the table with this. So I'm just going to essentially hold it down in one spot for a couple of seconds. The newsprint is actually there to keep my piece of paper clean, and I don't want to hold that on there too long just in case it does start to bubble, because some tacking irons are at higher watts, higher temperatures than others, and that can get really hot really fast. So it turns out that this is actually not heated up all the way. I should have said that before you start any of the process, you want to make sure that you turn on your tacking iron and that you switch on your hotbed press. So because this is at a very low temperature, we're just going to put it directly on, but again, we're putting it on the back just in case anything goes wrong. One thing to keep in mind with this process is that you can make things too hot very, very quickly, especially if you have something printed on very nice paper, like Epson printers, for example. They print on very nice rolled out paper, and that can, when put under extreme heat, it will crackle and pop and burn. You really don't want to do that, because obviously that's a lot of money that you just wasted on a print that you can't actually display or show to a client. My heating press actually just has like a little timer on it, and then it starts blinking a little red light at me and saying, hey, you need to get your stuff out of here. So yeah, this is not actually warm enough. Whatever, we can just keep on talking about this. So what I do is I always go at a couple 100 degrees lower than I think it's going to actually take, and I leave it under longer. And I check it intervals, like after a couple seconds, I check under it. Like, okay, well, is it attached yet? Yes, okay. Then I'll move on to the next section, trying to create as little or as much overlap as possible, depending on how big the piece is. Because personally, I don't like doing very, very large pieces, because my hotbed press is not very, very like deep. It's very sizable, but it's not very, very large. Like it couldn't take a 10 by 30 piece, but it could take I'd say a 20 by 20 piece, but you'd have to do it in sections. But you want to do any kind of dry mount in as little section as possible, just to decrease the amount of clamping, bubbling, or any kind of other distortions on the surface of your image. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get up into that, because that is also a very important thing to consider when you're strategizing on how to put your image under your hotbed. Because again, you don't want to waste materials, money, time, or effort, because everything is expensive. Okay, so it's finally heated up. Sorry that took so long. So yeah, we're just gonna hold it there for a little bit, and then we're gonna see. Yep, it's attached. So I went ahead and after I adhered the adhesive paper to the paper that I wish to dry mount, I went under the paper I wish to dry mount, and I put the tacking iron and attached the adhesive paper to the foam core. I did that on both sides. You can't quite see it, but I did it in opposite corners. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and put it under my hotbed press. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So this is our hotbed or hot press sandwich. So between the two kind of like plates of your hotbed press, you'll have one thicker piece of paper that will kind of that will make sure that the hot metal plate on the underside of this. Here we go, I'll show you. See how there are some parts where people haven't covered it and then parts of their design literally melt onto that? So we have one piece of paper to make sure that our print doesn't do that. Then I always just have a second piece of that, I always have a piece of newsprint under that has direct contact with my piece. And then you have your piece, and then there's a felt bed on the bottom side. And that's just to cushion your piece to make sure it doesn't get squished or crimped around the edges. It's essentially to protect your piece. So I have it on. I keep mine between 180 and 225, just kind of like on that little edge. But if you ever, and I mean ever, notice some odd scent when you come into the room after leaving it on, don't leave the room when you have it on, please. Or if you notice any weird scents, any smoke, or if you smell burning, or if you hear crackling, turn your machine off with the switch and then unplug it immediately. And I mean immediately, because that is a fire hazard. Very important that you always make sure that you are in the room when this is on. You don't leave the room. You make sure that someone is always in the room when this thing is on, because it is a fire hazard. Okay, sorry, PSA is over. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take this back bar right here. We're going to bring that over and forward, and we're going to push it down. This little red light comes on, and it'll start blinking in a minute. 1, 2, 3. Then I lift it up, and very gingerly I'm going to make sure that my piece is adhered. So I'm going to gently tug at the adhesive paper, and yes, it is adhered. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very carefully transport it, and we're going to put it on a piece of cutting, on a cutting board. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a very large sheet of metal, and we're going to press it down on there. So not everyone does this or always does this, but I put a piece of cold, flat, heavy metal on top of it after it comes off of the hotbed, just so that way I have something that will keep it from bubbling up, keep from having air bubbles under it. Generally, you don't have to worry about that as much with lower heats and high quality papers, but let's say you have a low heat and a printer quality paper, like you just have it off a copier machine, and you just want to like mount a keepsake flyer or something. You're more likely to have bubbles that way. It's just a really good rule of thumb to always keep a very heavy, flat piece of metal. If it's curved, it completely negates the entire process. You can feel through the metal sheet. It also gives you a good indicator of when it's done being pressed. So I can still feel a little bit of heat on there. So we're gonna leave this to sit until, I'd say for about 5 minutes, just to make sure that it's cool whenever I bring it out. The higher temperature you use, the longer you wanna leave it to wait. And if you have a bigger piece than this is like an 18 by 24 piece of sheet metal, then the longer you want to leave it for, just to make sure that it's completely compressed and it's all one. Now we're going to come back over here and we're done using it. So we're going to switch it off and then we are going to unplug it because that is generally good use of your area. So always make sure that you unplug your tacking iron and your hotbed press after you're done using them. Stewardship is always really important. Always take care of all of your stuff. Don't make more work for yourself than you have to do. And just, if you're a good steward and have good studio habits, then you'll save a lot of money, you'll save a lot of time, and it's just generally professional. I guess we didn't have to wait 5 minutes because it's already pretty cooled off. So, just gonna do a very light finger test. Okay, cool. So, as we can see here, we're just gonna gently pull at all the edges. I guess that you would actually turn off the hot press after you test the edges, but let's see, my corners are all done, everything is down, and if you look at that, wow, no warping, no bubbles, because I did it at intervals of a very low temperature. Thankfully, I only had to go at one interval, so that's very nice. Now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that this space is cleaned off. Actually, I have a brush for this. It's called a drafting brush. Normally, architects use them. I'm getting my own very soon, and I'm very excited about it. So, yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to take this, we're going to turn it gingerly on its side, and we're going to take a cork-back ruler. This is the Precision cork-back ruler, stainless steel. It has a cork back, obviously. Essentially, we're going to take our Exacto blade, run it along this, get any excess of the print and all of the excess of the adhesive paper, then we're going to dispose of that. We're going to use our Exacto blade to cut around all of the edges very carefully. Alright, I just finished cutting off all the excess, and this is our final result. So, as you can see, it's bubble free, although there are a couple edges where you can see more of the white form core than I would have liked. But this was just a sample to show you exactly how to dry mount. So I hope that this was helpful to you in documenting your art, preserving your art. Anyways, make good choices and have a great day.